Hey guys, Justin here, and lately I've been thinking about what are some of the best Zelda games in the franchise. There's so many to choose from, there's so many good options, but which ones really stand out? Which ones are my favorites? But that's not all that interesting. So today's episode is going to be a little bit different. While we wait for Tears of the Kingdom, I thought it'd be really cool to reach out to some of our favorite creators on Twitter and on YouTube to talk about their favorite Zelda games. You know, it's really easy just to say Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild is everybody's favorite Zelda game, unless they hate it. I know there's a population of people who really didn't like it, but for most people, it's just so good that it stands high above the rest. But with the responses we got, there's actually a lot of diversity. I mean, Breath of the Wild pops up occasionally, but there's a lot of Zelda represented here. So anyway, I hope you enjoy. Let's kick things off with Mark from the 11.5 Minutes podcast.
Howdy folks, I'm Mark Erickson, host of a podcast called 11.5 Minutes to talk about video games. It's an audio-only podcast typically, so I don't have a cool gamer background, but I do have my baby son's very nice nature mural behind me here, which is appropriate because my favorite Zelda game is Breath of the Wild. And I love it because of the open wilderness exploration and how you can find both gorgeous vistas and brief moments of wonder, just like you'd experience outdoors. And I think that's the main purpose of the game. It's not necessarily to defeat Ganon, although that's certainly a very core objective. It's more just to explore and have a great time with Link's toolkit in a virtual playground. And there's certainly still conflict in Breath of the Wild, but in a gaming landscape that's dominated by competition and intense and often brutal action, Nintendo chose Breath of the Wild to be almost contemplative in comparison. And the beauty of that world just makes me want to eradicate the evil in it all the more and go back to enjoying a peaceful glide down a mountain peak. And that's what Breath of the Wild is all about, Charlie Brown.
Next up, Slonko from the Slonko Bomb channel.
Hey y'all, it's your girl Slonko, and the fine gentlemen of Nintendo Watcher have invited me to their YouTube page to let you guys know what's my favorite Zelda game of all time. Simply put, very quickly, Link to the Past, hands down. Link to the Past has a very sentimental connection to me in my childhood. It's the first Zelda game that I've actually ever beaten in my entire life. Just coming from being about 3 or 4 when Legend of Zelda first came out, I didn't really get a chance to appreciate the lore, the story, the characters. So being a little bit older, I was able to kind of comprehend what exactly was going on. Just graphically, the improvements were just phenomenal to me. The sprites, the fairies look so beautiful. The characters, everything. I wanted to toss every stone, swim in every lake, chop every bush down. I also thought it was so freaking cool that you had 2 different worlds, Light World and Dark World. And both of them had their challenges for me. I don't really remember the game ever being quite the cakewalk at all. I feel like the game was very balanced in that sense, especially a person like me that comes from playing a lot of turn-based, a lot of linear gaming. This experience to be able to free roam and kind of go wherever I wanted to go was mind-blowing. I know there was a couple of bosses that really drove me nuts. One was the worm that kept knocking me off of the stage because there was a big opening in the middle of the platform. And then there was the 3-headed turtle. Oh my god. My favorite part about the game, honestly, was getting the Master Sword. In all of Zelda lore, is the first time you come across the known Master Sword. And to wield that as an 8-year-old really holds a very special place in my heart. And I could arguably say, out of the Zelda games that I have played, that this might be the number 1 game. And definitely top 3 in the SNES library. So I'd just like to thank Nintendo Watcher for allowing me to come on the page. It is quite an honor to be here, and I look forward to chatting with you guys a little bit later. See ya, bye.
Next up, PK from the PK in the Universe channel.
Thanks for having me on, Justin. I'm PK of PK in the Universe, and today I'm here to discuss The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening. The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening is my first experience playing a Zelda game. I played it when I was a kid. This is a game my mom got for me. I had a choice to pick out one game on Game Boy, and this is what I picked out. It's a game that I didn't expect to enjoy as much as I did. I got it because I was like, well, I had played Link to the Past, and I didn't have that much fun with it or whatever, but everybody said it was just like one of their favorite games ever. But I never got to play it for too long, so I figured it would be easier to play a Game Boy version of Zelda than it would be to play the Super Nintendo version, just because Game Boy games just happen to be easier. Games like Mario Land 2 were both easier than Super Mario World or Super Mario Brothers 3, So I thought, you know what? I'm going to get the Game Boy version, and I played it, and it's just one of my favorite games of all time. It's probably my favorite Zelda game of all time. I just have so many fond memories of it, playing that on an original DMG and taking it on car trips, and remember it getting dark. And of course, you're hoping for plenty of street light because you didn't have a backlit screen like you do with a modern, like the Game & Watch Zelda or whatever, which of course includes Link's Awakening, the original old school looking one, And there's just something about this game. I just love the atmosphere. I love that it goes against the standard norms that were set with the original Zelda. You'd always have Zelda, you'd have Ganon, you'd have Triforce. You got none of that with this game. Basically, Link, in a nutshell, is on a ship, and the ship sinks, and he ends up on this island, and he's got to wake this thing called the Windfish. And the people in the town are so quirky, and there's a lot of characters in here. A lot of, surprisingly well-developed characters for a Game Boy game. And I also got, of course, the DX version and, of course, an original Game Boy Color. I had got this at launch. I had gotten this as a Christmas present, and it just meant the world to me. And in fact, the funny thing, too, is I was playing Ocarina of Time as well at the time, so I had to really choose which one I wanted. And of course, there's the remake, and the remake is freaking great. The remake is fantastic. I love the quality of life features, and I do love the characters in the game because it looks like something from like claymation, or like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. It feels like you're like looking at toys when you play this game, and it's just something inherently special about it that I really enjoy about the remake. I really love all the Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening stuff. It is my favorite Zelda, and I have so much nostalgia for it. That's about all I really can say about it. And yeah, back to you, Justin.
Next up, Renae, a fellow YouTuber from the One Crummy Gamer channel.
What makes The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past such a beloved game? It's hard to pinpoint just one thing, but there are a few key factors that makes this game so fun to play. Firstly, the gameplay itself is incredibly satisfying. The puzzles and challenges are well designed and require a combination of creative thinking and dexterity to overcome. There's a great sense of satisfaction that comes from figuring out a tricky puzzle or defeating a tough enemy, and A Link to the Past delivers on both fronts. Secondly, the world of Hyrule is rich and immersive, with a ton of hidden secrets and treasures to discover. Every scene of the game is packed with detail and atmosphere, from the lush forest to the eerie dungeons. It's a joy to explore this world and uncover all of its secrets. But perhaps the biggest reason why people love A Link to the Past is the sense of adventure it creates. From the opening moments of the game, you're thrown into a world of danger and excitement, and it's up to you to save the day. There's a real feeling of heroism and accomplishment that comes from playing through this game, and it's incredibly satisfying, to be honest. And let's not forget about the music. A Link to the Past has one of the most iconic soundtracks in all of gaming, with unforgettable tunes like the Overworld theme and the Dark World theme. The music perfectly captures the sense of adventure and wonder that the game creates. All of these factors come together to make A Link to the Past a truly special game. It's no wonder why it's still beloved by gamers all around the world, even decades after its release. Whether you're a longtime Zelda fan or a newcomer to the series, A Link to the Past is a game that's sure to delight and entertain.
Next up, Jake from bitbloggist.com and co-host of the Retro Dodo podcast, Retrospect.
Hey, what's up, guys? Jake here, and I am so pumped to be able to talk about my favorite Zelda game of all time. And shocking probably no one, as this is many people's favorite, I would say mine would have to be The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. I was on the fence of really kind of video games for a long time, and I think I was just in a place where I wasn't really into a lot of stuff that I had seen coming out from the publishers in a while. We had that long stretch of the Wii U where things weren't great, and Breath of the Wild was the singular game that brought me back into gaming and is the reason why I'm still into gaming. It broke the mold from what was traditionally a Zelda game and opened up exploration in a way that I don't think had ever been done and really hasn't been done as well since. So yeah, Breath of the Wild is my favorite Zelda game, and I cannot wait for Tears of the Kingdom.
Next up, Landry, a contributor to bitbloggist.com.
All right, so my favorite game in the Legend of Zelda franchise, it's so hard to say because I love so many of them. But I think my favorite is The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. It's one of those pivotal video games for me that just changed the medium for me. It changed the way I viewed narrative in games. And I saw this game first when I was maybe 11 years old, probably 12. I don't know exactly. But I grew up on the Super Nintendo, right? I grew up on 2D action platformers like Super Mario World and Donkey Kong Country and Yoshi's Island. And the thing about those games is when they tell their story, it's like a static image and then some text, and that's it. But with Ocarina of Time, you have this active camera that is almost like cameras they use in cinema or in the movies. And I remember, I'll never forget the opening shot of Kokiri Forest where the camera kind of follows Navi around. And it's like fluttering around with her, but it's this incredible establishing shot of the forest as well, where we see these elf-like people. We see all the shops and houses that are carved into trees. We see these bright blue springs and lawns and gardens. And it all looks like a playground. There's so many points of interest. And what's so great about these Zelda games is that when you see a point of interest, you know that you can go out and try and explore it. You can find some kind of secret or maybe walk right up to it. And I think that's just, that exploration hook is really what keeps me coming back to these games. Also, the quirky characters in Ocarina of Time are so much fun. Every NPC is a delight to talk to. I despise games where like 90% of the NPCs are just a complete drag. You're not going to find that in Ocarina of Time. And also just the scale and verticality of the game. I remember going into the Great Deku Tree, the first dungeon, for the first time. And you climb all the way up to the top. And the first thing you have to do is jump through the entire tree. You jump all the way down to the bottom and you land in this kind of pool at the bottom. It was such a cool thing to do for a generation of gamers who were experiencing three-dimensional games for the first time. And to think that Ocarina of Time was one of the first 3D action-adventure experiences, or in that kind of dawn of 3D gaming, is just absolutely mind-blowing. They knocked it out of the park right there. So today, at least, my favorite game in the Zelda franchise is Ocarina of Time. Tomorrow, it may be Breath of the Wild. And in a month from now, it may be Tears of the Kingdom. But thank you for allowing me to talk about Ocarina of Time.
Next, Matthew from Nintendo Watcher.
Hey Watchers, Matthew here for our Zelda month of May to talk about my favorite entry in the Legend of Zelda franchise. Now, for me, it all goes back to 2000 at the Space World exhibition when Nintendo unveiled the first footage of a potential entry for the Legend of Zelda on the GameCube. Some people might remember this little trailer. It was a kind of highlight reel tech demo of the GameCube's potential, in which there was a short clip of about 10 seconds or so showing Link and Ganondorf facing off one-on-one in a sparring contest. It ends with the two clashing swords, and at the time, people lost their minds over this video. It was, proof of concept for what a next generation Zelda might look like. And rightfully so, people were very excited to see a darker, grittier, more a mature Zelda in the future. And then 2003 rolled around, and we received The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, my favorite entry in the entire series and the game that I hold most dear. Perhaps my favorite Nintendo game. Now, my love for the series goes beyond that ridiculous tech demo to cel-shaded Zelda kind of switcheroo, and has a lot to do with just the charm of that game. I had missed the Nintendo 64 Zeldas at the time. I never played Ocarina of Time or Majora's Mask until the 3DS entries came about. And so for me, this was actually my first experience with a 3D Zelda. I'd grown up playing the Game Boy version, the Game Boy Color version of Link's Awakening DX, and I loved that game. Link to the Past was a favorite of mine on my Super Nintendo, but in the N64 era, I had largely migrated to the PlayStation at the time. I didn't really come back into the fold fully until the GameCube. It was at this point where I got back into Zelda. Now, I know that Wind Waker is not the biggest, baddest, or most compelling Zelda game for a lot of fans, but for me it's got the most charm, some of the best exploration, really cool takes on classic items. I still love the original take on the hookshot from that game, which is the little swinging grapple rope that you throw. And for me, it just stands above as one of the games that is easiest to get back in, pick up, and play still to this day. So for me, there it is, my favorite Zelda, The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker.
When you ask someone a question like, what's your favorite Zelda game? It can be a really complicated question to answer. Especially for me. It can really depend on the day you ask me, what I've played lately. I could pretty easily tell you what my least favorite Zelda game is though. Skyward Sword. But my favorite Zelda game, at least today, has to be Link's Awakening. I remember playing Link's Awakening the first time on my Game Boy, way back in the day. It wasn't mine. I didn't own the Zelda game for my Game Boy, so I'm not even sure how I had it. Maybe I was borrowing it from somebody or something. But I remember walking around with the Chain Chomp and just being, kind of blown away by, what was a Chain Chomp doing in this Zelda game? I was obsessed with cutting grass and getting rupees from the grass. That's a super vivid memory for me. And this was before there was even the DX version of the game. And then when we got the remake with Link's Awakening on the Switch, that just solidified my love for this. I mean, PK mentioned this in his video, but the claymation style really did it for me. Playing through the remake of Link's Awakening last year just made me realize how right I was as a kid. This is a really great adventure, and to have it on a handheld again in an even better style, and a game that really stays true to the original. It's just a really special thing, and I'm very grateful to Nintendo for really taking a chance with that game. Just want to say thanks to all the people who helped me put this video together this week. You took time out of your work schedules and creative schedules and put some content together for the Nintendo Watcher channel, and I am so appreciative. If you liked what you heard, go check them out. I'll leave links to their Twitter and YouTube and whatever else in the description below. As always, guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing.